The fork slipped from my hand before his words even sank in. "You'll transfer the house to your brother, right?" he said, almost casually, like it was already decided. Laughter rolled around the dinner table, too smooth, too rehearsed, like everyone had been waiting for me to nod and agree. The chandelier hummed above us, light catching the rim of my half-empty glass. I set it down slowly, letting the silence stretch. "No," I said. That single word cracked the air open. My mother's hand froze mid-reach. My father's jaw twitched. Someone whispered my name as if I'd cursed in church. Then came the sound of a spoon tapping against porcelain, a warning. All my life, this table had been the stage for obedience. My brother, Ethan, had always been the star. When he failed, they called it pressure. When I succeeded, they called it luck. When I was 12, Ethan crashed my bike into a wall. Dad replaced his the same day. Mine stayed bent and rusting for years, a reminder of how fairness never lived in this house. At 16, I learned to fix things myself. The leaking faucet, the broken step, the loose hinge that everyone ignored. My mother used to laugh and say, "You should have been born a son, Claire. At least then you'd be useful." Ethan would grin behind his cereal spoon, tapping it like applause. Back then, I thought silence was strength. I thought if I kept fixing what they broke, they'd finally see me. But tonight, as I sat under that glowing chandelier, surrounded by the people who taught me how to disappear, I realized something. They never saw me because they never wanted to. The room was heavy with judgment, and still, I didn't flinch. I just looked at my father and said quietly, "I've built enough with my hands. I won't give away what's mine." And that's when his smile faded. Rehook. What I didn't know that night was saying no wasn't the end of a fight. It was the beginning of a war. After that dinner, no one called me for weeks. It was the kind of silence that doesn't come from peace, it comes from punishment. The house I'd bought 3 years ago sat on the edge of town, a 1920s craftsman with uneven floors and a roof that sighed every time it rained. Everyone said it was a waste of money. But for me, it was the first thing in my life that was truly mine. I poured everything I had into it. Every check, every weekend, every cut on my hands. I rebuilt those walls like I was rebuilding myself, piece by piece, nail by nail. Sometimes, I'd hear Grandma's voice in my head. She was the only one who ever looked at me like I wasn't a disappointment. She used to say, "You're like the roots under concrete, Claire. You don't shout. You just keep growing until you break through." When she passed, everyone expected I'd get nothing. But when her will was read, Ethan got her trust fund. And I got her journals. The family acted like that was fair. But inside those journals were pages of wisdom, small sketches, and letters she'd never sent. Notes about people, mistakes, forgiveness, and a single line that I underlined 100 times. "What they ignore in you will one day be the thing they envy." Those words became my blueprint. I learned how to restore wood, how to paint over cracks without hiding their story. That's how I found the house, broken, unwanted, half-forgotten, just like me. One morning, while I was sanding the window frame, my phone buzzed. Dad's voice came through, cold, steady. "Ethan needs that house more than you do. If you don't sign it over by Friday, we'll see you in court." I froze. Not because I was afraid, but because I finally understood they weren't just taking my house. They were trying to erase proof that I could stand without them. I placed the phone down, looked at the sunlight spilling through the dusty glass, and whispered, "Then I'll see you there." I thought I knew how far my family could go. But the next call proved I hadn't seen anything yet. The next call came the very next morning. This time, it was my mother. Her voice was sharp, coated in fake concern. "Claire, you know what you owe us. Don't make this ugly. Your father's trying to protect the family name." I didn't answer right away. The line hummed, like it was waiting to record my surrender. But all I said was, "Protecting who, Mom? Him? Or his pride?" The silence that followed was louder than her voice ever was. Then came the soft click of disconnection. I stood in the middle of my half-restored living room, paint dust on my wrists, a hammer resting on the floor, and felt a familiar ache. Not fear. Recognition. This wasn't about property. It was about control. It always had been. When I was young, every time Ethan broke something, I fixed it before they came home to keep the peace. Now, they were trying to break me the same way. And for the first time, I wasn't going to clean up after them. That evening, I called Julia, an old friend from college who had become an attorney. Her office smelled like paper, dust, and the kind of focus that makes people uncomfortable. She listened without interrupting, just tapping her pen slowly against her notebook. Then she said something that made my chest feel lighter than it had in months. "They're threatening to sue you for what you built on your own. Let them try." Her laugh was quiet, confident, the kind that slices through fear. We sat together for hours, planning every move, documents, deeds, evidence, witness records. For once, I wasn't the one reacting. I was preparing. That night, as the rain started tapping against my windows, I labeled every folder: mortgage, renovations, inheritance, threat calls. Each click of the mouse felt like a heartbeat. Each label, a piece of my voice coming back. At 2 a.m., I stopped working and looked around the house, the one they called a mistake. And for the first time, it didn't look broken. It looked like proof. I thought gathering evidence would protect me. I didn't realize it would expose what they'd been hiding for years. The following week, Julia called again. Her tone was calm, too calm. "They filed the lawsuit," she said. I didn't flinch this time. "Good," I replied. "Now we build back." 2 days later, I sat in her office. Sunlight cut through the blinds, painting lines of light and shadow across the table between us. Julia slid a folder toward me. "You'll need to sign here. Counterclaim for fraud and misappropriation." The words looked heavy on paper, but they sounded like freedom. When I signed, something shifted in my chest, a quiet click, like a door finally locking. Julia flipped open another file. "Claire, I need you to tell me everything about your grandmother's trust." So I did. I told her how the money vanished the same year my parents remodeled their kitchen and Ethan bought a brand new car. She listened, then looked up, eyes sharp. "You're telling me the funds disappeared before you received anything?" I nodded. Her lips curved, but not in a smile. "Then they left a trail. We spent hours tracing it, wire transfers, tax records, missing signatures. Every paper we opened was another ghost dragged into the light. By the end of the day, we knew. They hadn't just tried to take my house, they'd stolen from me long before I ever owned it." That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through the house barefoot, touching the walls I'd painted, the floorboards I'd sanded smooth. The air was heavy with rain and memory. I whispered to the empty room. "You thought I wouldn't find out, didn't you?" The wind outside answered, brushing against the cracked window pane. I realized then, this house wasn't just mine. It was my witness. It had heard every lie, absorbed every silence, and still, it stood. I looked around, at every nail and scar I'd healed, and said softly. I looked around, at every nail and scar I'd healed, and said softly. "If you taught me to fix what's broken, you should have known I'd start with the truth." But the truth doesn't stay buried quietly. Sometimes, it drags the whole family down with it. It was a Friday evening when my father's voice returned to my voicemail, formal, rehearsed, dripping with control. "Family dinner. Sunday night. Everyone will be there. Be respectful." Respect. The same word they used every time they wanted me small. Julia looked up from her desk when I told her. "You're going," she said firmly. "Why?" "Because it's not a dinner anymore," she said. "It's a courtroom with wine glasses." That Sunday, I arrived with Julia and Carlos, her paralegal, beside me. The dining room smelled of lemon polish and old habits. Every chair was full except one, mine. Mom smiled first, her mascara trembling like it wanted to fall. "You came, sweetheart," she said softly. "I didn't come to fight," I replied. "I came to finish." Dad cleared his throat, pretending to own the air. "Let's discuss what you owe the family." Julia smoothed the tablecloth, her hand steady as stone. "Let's," she said, sliding a folder across to him. The sound of paper against wood cracked through the room. Dad flipped it open, his face drained of color line by line. "These are financial records," Julia interrupted. "Proof that the inheritance funds from your mother's trust were rerouted under your name and your son's." Mom's breath hitched. A glass trembled in her hand. Ethan shifted in his seat. "This is ridiculous," he spat. She's twisting everything. I looked at him, my voice low but firm. You used my inheritance to buy your car. And you helped them try to steal my house. That's not twisting, Ethan. That's math. Julia motioned to Carlos, who slid another envelope across the table. Bank transfers, he said quietly. Every cent accounted for. For a moment, no one moved. Then the noise erupted, overlapping voices, accusations, chairs scraping the floor. Julia waited, unbothered, then spoke just loud enough to slice through the chaos. You have 48 hours to drop the lawsuit, return the stolen funds, and correct your taxes. Otherwise, we go federal. The chandelier hummed above us, the only sound in a room built on lies. I stood, pushing my chair back slowly. I didn't come for revenge, I said. I came for the truth. But the truth doesn't just end dinner conversations. It burns the whole table down. No one followed me out that night. Behind me, their voices turned to distant echoes, accusations, excuses, fear, all blending into one fading hum. For the first time, I didn't feel small. I felt finished. The air outside was cool, clean. Julia walked beside me in silence. You did what needed to be done, she said. I nodded. They wanted control. And now? They have consequences. We reached the car. My father's voice shouted my name from the house, muffled through glass and distance. I didn't turn back. I didn't need to. 6 months later, peace didn't feel like I thought it would. It wasn't loud or triumphant. It was quiet, steady, and full of small sounds. The drip of rain on the porch roof, the hum of the old radiator, the creak of the floor I once thought would collapse. The lawsuit had ended. The repayments began. Silence replaced the chaos they once used to keep me afraid. Most mornings, I'd sit on the steps with coffee in hand, watching sunlight crawl across the wood I'd sanded myself. Every line, every scratch, every scar gleamed like proof that some things survive even after being broken. One afternoon, Julia stopped by, no briefcase this time, just a cardigan and soft eyes. She handed me a small envelope. All settled, she said. They signed everything. I didn't open it. The knowledge was enough. After she left, I walked barefoot into the garden, the same one I'd rebuilt from roots and rot. The soil was damp beneath my feet, cool and alive. I thought of Grandma's words, some roots grow through concrete just to find light. Maybe she saw this coming. Maybe she knew I had to grow alone to grow at all. Through the window, I saw the house glowing faintly under the gray sky, not perfect, not new, but whole. I ran my hand along the railing I'd once leaned on while crying. The wood was smooth, now strong. Sunlight caught the old keyring hanging near the door. I reached out, letting the metal rest against my palm. For the first time, it didn't feel like weight. It felt like proof. Proof that I survived. Proof that I rebuilt. Proof that silence doesn't mean surrender. It means peace. Final emotional line. They tried to take my house. But in the end, it was the house that gave me back my voice. It's been almost 2 years now. 2 years since I walked out of that dinner table and left the weight of my family's silence behind. The house is different now. Not because I changed it, but because it changed me. The floors don't creak the same way they used to. The light falls softer through the windows, and the air smells faintly of pine and coffee. I still wake up early, the way Grandma used to. Sometimes I talk to her, not out loud, but in the spaces between breaths. See, Grandma, I whisper in my mind, you were right. Some roots really do break concrete. The mailbox at the front still leans slightly, the one I never bothered to replace. Maybe it reminds me that imperfection is proof of survival. I keep her journals on the kitchen shelf. The pages are worn now, the corners curled. Every time I open them, I find something new she wrote about forgiveness. Not the kind that excuses people. The kind that releases you. Mom wrote once after the settlement. Just one letter. She said she never meant for it to go that far, that she was scared of losing the family. But she never asked what it felt like to almost lose myself. So I didn't reply. Some stories don't need sequels. They need silence. Now, when it rains, I listen to the drops hit the porch roof and realize that sound used to mean loneliness. Now, it sounds like peace. I walk through the room sometimes, tracing the walls with my fingers, feeling every line of paint, Every memory layered into it. Each scar, each repair, it's all part of the record. Because this house isn't just where I live. It's where I finally stopped apologizing for existing. I don't wait for validation anymore. I don't chase their approval. I build. I rest. I grow. And when people ask me what justice felt like, I smile and tell them. It sounded like a door quietly closing. And a woman finally breathing. Outro line. They took my silence for weakness. But silence was never surrender. It was the sound of my strength returning home.